Of introducing the writer-director of Terrifier, Damien Leone, and David Howard Thornton, Art the Clown! David, I believe you are here. David, I believe you are there. Right. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Did we spell it right and everything? Did I pronounce it right? That's really the more.
How do you pronounce it?
I said Leone.
Wow, I like that. Sounds very fancy.
Am I close to correct or
Leone?
Leone?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, Leone. All right.
I'll take anything. Leone, whatever.
Leone? Leones? No, that's a wonderful topping for no. So I want to get straight to the mind that wrote and directed this thing. I would love to go. No, it's because of the fact that I've spoken to so many different horror icons over the years with this convention that I know what a lot of the answers are quite often to something like this. But I need to know, what is it? Was there a trigger? Was there a moment? Was there a fear you had, or something you saw that you were like, oh, this is art, and suddenly you've come up with this idea?
No, but I mean, I say this all the time. I'm sorry if you guys watch interviews and I repeat myself all the time. But it really did start. The genesis was my mother named me after The Omen and introduced me to horror movies since I'm literally 3 years old. Yeah, so when
So you have the greatest mother in the world.
She is the coolest mother ever. Rated R, and they weren't just horror movies. But they could be anything. I mean, primarily it was. This was the movies that I watched when I was literally 3 years old. Was Jaws, Red Sonja, Commando, Rambo: First Blood Part 2, Beastmaster, and then it was Friday the 13th Part 3, 4, Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 3, and The Lost Boys. That was like the group of movies that I grew up watching.
And Debbie Does Dallas.
Well, yeah. You need something light to mix it up in that one.
But that was it at a very young age, and I just gravitated toward horror for some reason. I was obsessed with it. I was obsessed with monsters.
That list is a phenomenal
pretty
starter as far as how
starter
do I
kit,
learn.
The mother starter kit.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah.
So you just loved monsters. You loved growing up with monsters. In that list specifically, is there a moment that you can think back on and go, I clicked, I want to make monsters?
Yes, I can absolutely tell you that.
What is that?
So Friday the 13th, I would rent movies. Also, I lived in a mom and pop video store that was like a mile away from
I'm sorry, for you young ones,
Yeah.
video stores are like a 3D printed Netflix.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to rewind things and be kind.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
now nobody's kind because we just stream it all.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No.
Video stores.
So Friday the 13th Part 6, okay? On that video cassette, the coming attraction before the movie started was screen grates, which, if you don't know, is it's an hour, basically, Fangoria-produced tutorial of Tom Savini, the found in my house to have blood spray and things like that. That was a profound moment when I found for some reason there was like a Groucho Marx set of glasses in my house that squirted water. And I took the tubing off of that and I put it into a soap dispenser and I taped it to the back of a butter knife and I like sliced it and pumped at the same time and I saw the water come out and I was like, oh my God, if I put fake blood in there, like that's gonna work. Like that's amazing. Yeah, exactly.
This is
oh gosh, this is how it happened. So really, I every time I'm asked that question, I owe a lot to Savini because it started with my love for effects, and then it grew into directing because I wanted to be in charge of the whole world, creating the whole world. Eventually, I was just in love with filmmaking, and a lot of those effects only work. They're movie illusions. They're not, so you have to do camera trickery in order for them to work.
Oh yeah.
So that grew into just my love of storytelling.
Did you ever get a chance to meet Tom Savini?
I have, yeah, multiple times. Never like super intimate. I'm shy with meeting my heroes and things like that, so I'll just like say hello and run away and things like that. But the coolest thing happened recently is we were at a convention together, Chiller in New Jersey. And it was Halloween weekend, and there was a Halloween costume party that night. And for the first time in years, I was like, I'm going to actually dress myself up as something, because I'm always dressing other people up. I never get to celebrate Halloween. So I made myself up as Vincent from Beauty and the Beast, the 1980s Ron Perlman show.
The TV show. That is awesome.
The TV show, because I'm obsessed with Rick Baker as well.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite makeups. So I did that, and I get in the elevator to go down to the party. The elevator doors are open, and it's Tom Savini. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, he has no idea who I am.
Yeah.
And I get in the elevator, and he's like, wow, he's like, that's a really cool makeup. And he just comes up to me, and he starts looking at it, and I'm just dying. So I'm falling apart.
You've got a master of
Falling
makeup
apart.
looking
This is my
for-
hero. This is like someone meeting Elvis Presley or something like that. Like, it was wild. And I'm just like dying. So I just thank you. Oh, that's so cool, man.
Complimenting your edges.
Yeah.
Complimenting my edges. Yeah.
You blend well.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. So that was everything. I could have died right there.
David, there's a question that I've been dying to ask you since the first time I ever met you, and that is, what helps more with the scary background? Would it be your mime experience or your musical theater experience?
I would probably say my musical theater experience. That was like really, but they kind of blended together because that was my style. Because I grew up doing a lot of physical comedy because I was inspired by the great physical comedians, great silent clowns especially, like Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Harpo Marx, and all that. And I would always integrate that in like a lot of the characters I played. Plus, going into musical theater, this directly ties into it because I had done 5 national tours with How the Grinch Stole Christmas the musical. And our Grinch, if anybody remembers him, it was Stephen Carl, who played Robbie Rodden from the show Lazy Town. And Stephen actually was professionally trained in clowning and mime work, and he was an amazing physical comedian. And I, grew up in Alabama. I didn't go to school for theater. I went to school to become an elementary school teacher, and so I didn't have actual real training in that area. I just learned from watching everything, and I just did it myself on stage. So Stefan was able to actually take me aside and was like, okay, I see what you're doing. Here's how you make this better. And he would just, teach me these little tricks and everything. And so when I did tackle art, I would have, it was like about a year after, I did my last tour with Grinch, and I was just like, I'm going to approach this like Stefan would, and like, how would he go about the physicality of this character? Because there's no dialogue or anything. I have to convey everything with my face and my body. And I'm like, how would Stefan approach this scene? And I was like, oh, I know what I'm doing. So I always call him, what would Stefan do on this? And it's inspired me ever since. It's like I unfortunately he passed away from cancer back in 2018, but I like to think I'm kind of carrying on his torch in a different way now, because he's this amazingly talented man, and he never got as famous as I feel the man deserved to be, because he was a powerhouse on stage and on film too.
Now, did you use a lot of that physical comedy? Obviously, led into Beyond Art. You just recently.
Years ago.
Really?
Yeah, that was 10 years ago. This
Long
time,
information.
yeah. Oh, I did that twice though. I did that 10 years ago and 8 years ago. But that's a lot of great comedy.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love doing that show because I played like 30 different characters in that show every time, and I played both clown roles in there. So I played 60 characters in that show.
Wow.
Which is insane because they're all like English and Scottish and all this. So I had to come up with all these different voices. I would sometimes have to argue with myself on stage and I'd switch back and forth between characters. It was a lot of fun, but very exhausting. I would be sweating profusely by the end of the show. But just pure joy.
And somebody who is, I would say, most well known, especially in the horror community, as Art the Clown, silent.
I was going to say, it's a shame he doesn't speak. Huh?
I know, and,
the
but
irony.
I also know from some YouTube videos and stuff, you have thousands of impersonations.
I do voices, yes.
Yeah, and the fact that Art is 100% silent, it's fun to see the exact opposite in you when we see you outside of Art.
The irony of it all.
How is it as somebody who, with musical theater, with that background, how is it like doing that process to cool down to Art?
It's pretty easy for me. It's like, especially now going into part 2, because like part 1, I was still discovering things about the character, but I'm like, I never shut up on set anyway, so I think that's how he always gets me to shut up. He just goes rolling, and like,
Oh, time to
So I get it all out in between takes, and I'm doing silly voices all the time. So it probably looks really weird when you see me covered in blood, and I'm just like, I want to ride my bicycle. It's just, I would just have those moments of just weirdness.
I would kill to be sitting next to you with art makeup singing bicycle.
I think people want to kill me after a while.
Gets old real fast.
I was like, 1 second, I'm just myself, then like doing something serious, and I stick my fingers in a gun, and I'm I ain't stinking.
Because it's such a collaborative process as far as writing and then filming and starring in such a character-driven piece like this question is really for both of you as far as, from the writer side, from the performer side, does art have an internal monologue?
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Even though I don't have written lines or anything like that, I'm always doing an internal monologue in my head. Because it just helps me convey what I need to convey, especially with my face, because I'm just doing the lines in my head. He's saying this smart ass stuff all the time, and I guess it just reads it.
That's one of the great things about him. I think he doesn't need to speak or articulate his mannerisms, his expressions. He conveys so much emotion that the audience could fill in the dialogue for themselves. And they're all basically on the same page. But it could be a little different for everybody, you know what I mean? But everybody gets the same point comes across. Like, you know when in Terrifier in the pizzeria when she sits on his lap and takes the selfie and everything like that, and you're like, oh, like, he's fucking pissed. Like, this is gonna come back and she's gonna get a hat. You know? Yeah. So moments like that, you don't need the dialogue. He's so expressive, and it all comes through. And I think
there are moments in every horror film that I like to show to people that are not horror fans, to show you that this is the artistic quality that horror can bring to the table, so give the genre a complete chance. One of them, and I know it's going to seem odd, but one of them is a moment where Art has the plastic bag around the woman's face. And first, as a writer, to subvert what we expect to see, which happens in every single stupid movie where a plastic bag gets put around somebody's face, you see this, and instead she's smart enough it's a fucking plastic bag. Rip it open, do the smart thing, damn it, woman. And she does, but Art's reaction to the bag is this brilliant bit of filming and character work. I want to know about that scene and where, as a writer, where did you come up with, oh, this is how we're going to get out of this kill and move this story forward?
Yeah, well, the plastic bag thing, that's something I actually used before. I recycle things. If you've seen the short film in All Hallows Eve, there's the 2 short films I've done with the spike and slam it into his foot. And there's a beat in between there where she has to kind of recover and cough. And then Dave brings all that moment where he just looks at the bag. He's like, oh, well, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like that.
Kill time.
Yeah, like that's Dave killing time.
Oh.
Right? But internally, you would say, like, he knows that thing is very could break, and it's like she can easily get out of that.
Yeah.
So it's just like him fucking with the character and the audience. Like, even he knows.
He's so confident.
Yeah.
It's again, like what you said, it's going to be different because without the actual dialogue, it's going to be different for everyone. That look on your face to me as an audience member 100% reads like, you failed me.
Right, that's the last thing that could have happened.
You weren't supposed to fail me.
Right.
Speaking of things that subvert what we expect in a horror genre, there is the moment where she is shouting, get up, get up, get up to Art, and he turns and spins with the gun.
That was so much fun. I felt so badass.
Some people laugh. Some people are horrified and angry.
Oh, I love
Yeah. We say that all the time. That's the most polarizing scene in the entire movie. And I've been to screenings where people laughed when it happened. People screamed. People booed. That they were so angry that they were.
Like one person just like bullshit.
There was a screening, I swear, where all those reactions happened simultaneously. And
It was amazing. I was like, wow,
I was about to say, how did I feel you too?
like electrifying.
Oh, that was great.
It was wild. And because you have people who are rooting for Art, the people who are rooting for Tara. people who are just immersed in the experience of a horror movie, that anything goes, and they're just, they laugh at the absurdity of a horror movie, and anything could happen. So that was really exciting. That was really cool, and that was my Janet Leigh moment. I knew that writing the script, I was going to try and mess with everybody. But it's not so much messing with people as setting up. The whole thing with Terrifier 1 was it was so low budget. I've been making movies for so long, and I had 2 short movies with art, and every time I made a movie with art, the audience would say, or family and friends who watched it, they were like, this character's really cool. Just like, keep going, make something else, like expand. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to make a feature, and I knew that I had to come out of the gate just like swinging for the fences and be like, all right, this is going to be, Terrifier is going to be my showcase for Art the Clown as a villain. Every like cool, sadistic thing, piece of his personality I can put into this movie, I'm going to do, and hopefully like he grabs onto people and he sticks. So that was really it. So as we all know, it's like very short on plot and story, and it's really just like he's the star of the movie. It is about the villain. So this was me saying you cannot, as a character, as a villain, you're never safe with this character.
Yes.
Okay, he will take out the protagonist if he wants to, and
any way possible.
Exactly,
Yeah.
any way possible, and he's unpredictable. And the fact that he's unpredictable is one of the strongest assets of his character, because you never know what's going to happen next. You never know what he's going to pull out of his bag, what he's going to pull out of his boot. So,
and to me, it was laughing. The next reaction was, I have not seen that. I have not seen the moment where a strangler, a stabber, a beater type character, a blunt force was like, I'm going to use a gun. And instead, my brain looked at Art at that moment, oh, it is just about the killing. Whatever means necessary. Oh, I have nothing else? Oh, look, a number 2 pencil. I'll do it.
Sure. Well, that was my mindset. It's like, what if this character is ever backed into a corner by a bunch of police or something like that? I'm like, does he go as far as getting arrested and then he's in a courtroom? I'm like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, so what would,
I played the 5th.
Yeah, which I've said before, it could be hysterical and amazing. But I'm like, what would happen would this character ever let it go that far? And I said, no, if he really had to get out of the situation, he'd probably just take himself out of the equation. So that was one of the reasons why the gun came into it. And the other thing is just because even back then when I wrote this, he pulls out a gun in All Hallows Eve, which I made in about 2010 or 11, maybe earlier, I don't know, could have been 2008. But guns there was a lot of horrifying gun things happening in the country at that point. So I was like, could I put the gun in the hands of a slasher like Jason or Freddy and make that scary? And could a slasher use it in a way that they use a knife?
Yeah.
So that was like, I like testing myself, and a lot of things I do, they don't work, but that was one of the things where I'm going to see if I could do that, because I want him to stand out from the other slashers. I think keeping it in line with the traditional slashers that we love, but putting like a modern twist or giving you something a little different is where I'm coming from. So I wanted to test the gun and see if that could work.
In describing Terrifier to people, I have said that it can equally, if you tell me that it was made in 1987, or you tell me it was made yesterday, I believe either one.
Wow, that's a great comment.
When I watch that, style-wise, and it's the difference between I'm going to make something that feels and looks like an 80s, so you can tell it's somebody mimicking the best style, and somebody who is, especially with the lineup of films you gave us that you grew up on, somebody who is truly immersed in that feeling, and so it's coming from that emotion of those films rather than just mimicking a style.
Right.
So that's why I'm like, you could have told me it was made that many years ago, I would have went, yeah, no, Terrifier. I missed it somehow.
I like to think it's organic, and it's not trying to be a gimmick, even though we do use, especially like the short film, I put the green and stuff because I want it to feel like a throwback. But at its core, its essence, I hope it comes across as organic, because it is. Those are the movies that I love, and I don't want to like name movies, but there's ones that purposely try to look like a grindhouse, and they're very gimmicky.
Yes.
And they're so...
They're filtered movies.
Yeah.
Somebody put an Instagram filter on it.
Yeah, it's not even so much the look, it's the feel. They go too corny. And like if you really watched exploitation movies, they weren't necessarily trying to be corny. Like they were trying their best to be good movies. And sometimes it was just a lack of getting great actors or your production quality, money. That's where it came
Somebody
in.
said they could fight and they couldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you should always try and make the best product possible. You know, and if it happens, great.
Now, you mentioned the short films.